Okay, good evening, students. Welcome to the GST and Customs Act class. In this class, we will try to discuss about the various tax return forms to be submitted by the various suppliers registered under various schemes. You know, in the previous semester, we have learned that all the registered traders, all the registered suppliers under GST are required to submit their various returns to the both central and state governments so as to follow the rules and regulations of the GST law. There are several schemes under GST and several category of people who are required to submit various forms of returns at various intervals. Somebody may submit monthly returns, somebody may submit quarterly returns, somebody may return annual returns. So accordingly, the concerned persons or the concerned traders or concerned suppliers have to submit their returns properly without any misinformation, in which various information, correct information is to be provided, submitted to the state and central governments, and accordingly they can take the benefits which are accrued by following the procedures. Okay, so now India is heading towards its biggest tax reforms ever. The whole world is watching this rollout as the as the world third largest economy is moving towards a destination-based tax reporting structure. Every transaction has to be reported through the last mile with a common invoice identifiable to the seller and recipient of goods and services. So, India is a third largest economy which has implemented the ever never greatest act, that is the GST Act, from 1st July 2017. The total world is watching the India how the GST will be implemented in India. So from July 1st onwards, July 1st 2017 onwards, the India has implemented the GST law. The GST Council and the Ministry of Finance have come up with a great solution to record all such invoices in one place and collate data for the taxpayer. The processes have been simplified and many taxes have been removed. The whole nation shall report using the same structure irrespective of where and how you carry your business. Now, after introduction of GST in India from July 1st, 2017, several reforms were introduced, several old taxes levied by both central, state, and local have been abolished, and the transparency has been bring into the system both to the traders as well as to the customers. See, the traders or the suppliers are required to submit various returns in the website of GST. A widespread IT system has been developed or has been deployed by the ministry to cope up with such a huge influx of data. It is called the GSTN, that is Goods and Services Tax Network, that will house all the information of sellers and buyers together, collaborate the details submitted, and even maintain three registers for you for future reference and anytime reconciliation. Now, as a part of the IT system, because the GST tax system has been used, the IT system or software system or IT software, where all the traders, buyers and sellers have to upload all their information in a single network, that is goods and service tax network. This network was established by the ministry, and through this network all the data of all the people will be collected, and not only the data submitted by the traders and suppliers, but also each and every organization has to prepare, has to maintain three e-ledgers, three e-ledgers in the GST network. These three e-registers, these three e-registers are helpful for the traders in maintaining their business accounts. Okay. Understanding the GST returns. For properly updating the invoices, Indian taxpayers and businesses have to file certain returns with the government. So, as a part of the following the procedure adopted by the GST Act, the registered traders have to file certain forms of returns with the government. These returns have to be mandatorily filed, as any non-compliance towards the same may lead to disallowance of input tax credit apart from attracting penalties and interests, etc. So, suppose if any registered trader or the supplier does not file its returns at appropriate time, then it leads to disallowance of tax input tax credit. That means he may not get back his input tax, and he may be attracted penalties and interest. Therefore, proper filing of information and passing the same in the returns is a mandatory process for smooth flow of credit to the last recipient. Therefore, every registered supplier has to file the returns mandatorily so as to flow input tax credit smoothly from top to bottom. Okay, the returns have been designed so that all transactions are in sync with each other and that no transaction is left unattended between the buyer and the seller. So here in the IT system or the GST network, all the buyers and sellers have to upload all the information, all the data, so that there may be sync between the data given by the buyers as well as data given by the sellers. That means the buyer has to submit information regarding from whom he has buy, what is the invoice number, what is the date of invoice number, what is the number, registration number of the buyer from which he has bought the goods or services. And in the same manner, the seller also should upload the details of the person to whom he has sold the goods or services. His number, his register number, his invoice number, his date of invoice, details of goods and all this. So that both will update or upload their data into the GSTN so that the data will be verified by the computer itself. If there is any mistake or if there is any mistake between the data produced by the buyer and the seller, immediately the computer will show the error. So the tail starts from GSTR1. All the data is stored in GSTN, which can be accessed by the users, taxpayers, anytime online. So whatever the data submitted in the various forms by the suppliers, all the data is stored in GSTN, that is GST network. So this network will access the anybody can access the data stored in GST network. Next, what are the various types of returns, various forms of returns to be filed by the normal taxpayers? There are two schemes. One is a normal scheme and another one is a composition scheme. Okay. So what are the various forms of returns to be submitted by the normal scheme taxpayers? Okay. So let us see. The GSTR1. GSTR1. The normal taxpayer records price of goods in detail in this form. The normal taxpayer or the person who is under normal scheme record all his outward supplies. Outward supplies means all the details about his sales of goods and services in this form GSTR1. This has to be mandatorily done by the 10th of the next month. So this is a monthly return form. GSTR1 is a monthly return form to be submitted by the normal taxpayers by the end of next month 10th. Okay, that means for January the transactions, this GSTR1 is to be submitted by February 10th. GSTN is frequently changing the due date of filing GSTR1. So keep changing arrangements, keep checking announcements. Therefore, this due date is 10th of the next month. Suppose sometimes the due date may change. Therefore, the suppliers are requested to update or regularly in touch with the GSTR 1 or GSTN website. This will form the basis for all future flow and match for credit reconciliations. So GSTR1, which contains different activities or different information, is a basis for all future transactions or for all future credit reconciliations. Okay, so GSTR1 is a detailed form containing 13 different heads. There will be 13 different heads in which complete information will be gathered from GSTR1 by the government through online. Okay, so the critical headings, what are the important headings? GSTIN of taxable person, name, gross turnover in the last financial year, the period for which the return is being filed, taxable outward supplies to end customers, any other supplies not covered in above two sections, debit notes or credit notes details, amendments to the details of any outward supplies of previous period, exempted, nil rated and non-GST supplies, export sales, tax liability arising out of advance receipts, tax paid. So these are the various important details submitted under various head in the GSTR1. GSTR1 is a monthly return form to be submitted by the normal taxpayers. Okay. Next, GSTR2A. So GSTR2A is available on the 11th of the next month for the recipient to see and validate the information therein. The recipients have time between 11th to 15th of the next month to change any information, delete or add based on their books of accounts. Okay. Here GSTR2A form GSTR2A. It's also monthly returns form. It is available to the customer or available to the suppliers from 11th of next month. The recipient have time between 11th to 15th of next month to change any information, delete or add based on their books of accounts. So this GSTR2A is auto-populated data submitted by the GST authorities. So based on the GSTR1, this GSTR2A data is auto-filled, and this can be verified by the traders. If there are any changes to be made according to their books of accounts, they can make changes. Next, GSTR2, form GSTR2. This form is the culmination of all inward supplies of goods and services as approved by the recipient of these services. The due date is 15th of next month. It is auto-populated with the details of GSTR 2A. Okay, after the validation of GSTR 2A, GSTR 2 is auto-populated. Okay, so suppose if there are no changes in the GSTR 2A, that itself is can be considered as a GSTR 2. Suppose if there are any modifications, then GSTR 2 is auto-populated. So the due date is 15th of the next month. That means after submission of GSTR 2A modifications, that becomes GSTR 2. Okay, it is auto-populated with the details of GSTR 2A. So in the GSTR 2, all inward supplies of goods and services will be shown. All inward supply, that means all purchases made by the suppliers will be shown in the GSTR 2. This is also monthly returns form. Next, GSTR 1A. The form shall be auto-populated after filing of GSTR 2 on the 15th of the next month, having all the correct and changed information. Okay, so the R2A, GST R2A, if you make corrections, that becomes GSTR2. Then the GSTR2 will become GSTR1A. Therefore, it is to be submitted by the 15th of the next month. This is also monthly returns to be submitted. So this is also auto-populated. That means at every stage there is a correction or rectification of errors. The correction of data is allowed. So once the data is confirmed at one stage, immediately it will be converted or it will be auto-populated in another form. So the supplier shall have the choice to accept or reject the changes made by the recipient. So if there are any corrections in the GSTR 1A, that can be done by the recipient. Following such acceptance, the GSTR 1 shall be revised to such extent. So if after making corrections in GSTR 1A, automatically GSTR 1 is revised and submitted to the government officials. Next, GSTR 3. GSTR 3 is a form is auto prepared by 20th of next month. Okay, so after finalization of GSTR 1A, the GSTR 3 is auto prepared by the 20th of next month. It will have the details of all outward as well as inward supplies of goods and services as furnished in GSTR 1 and GSTR 2. So this GSTR 3 is auto-populated by taking the data from GSTR 1 and GSTR 2. In GSTR 1, the supplier is providing all sales details, and in GSTR 2 he is providing all purchase details. So GSTR 3 is a combination of the information of GSTR1 and GSTR2. After considering both the details, GSTN will determine your input to tax credit availability or the amount of tax payable. Okay, so after finalization of your sales and purchases, the GSTN will determine how much input tax credit availability, net input tax credit availability to the customer, and how much he has availed, how much still is to be availed, and at the same time how much tax is to be paid, how much paid, how much to be payable. All this information is calculated by the computer itself. Next, GSTR 9. GSTR 9 is an annual return form. So up to GSTR 3, all the returns are of monthly in nature. That means monthly returns. Every month, GSTR 1A, GSTR 1, GSTR 2A, GSTR 2, GSTR 3 are to be submitted by the suppliers. It's monthly returns. Then all the 12 months returns will be clubbed together and it will be prepared in GSTR 9. So this is the annual return which the taxpayer has to file by 31st December of the coming financial year. The due date for submitting the GSTR 9, that is annual returns, is 2. That is 31st of the next year, 31st December of the next financial year. It is nothing but the accumulation of all 12 monthly GSTR 3 of the taxpayer. Okay, so monthly GSTR of 12 months is clubbed together, then automatically it becomes GSTR 9. That means total 12 months, what are the total purchases, total sales, total tax paid, total tax received, all the details are available in the GSTR 9. That data is relating to the 12 months period. It would also include the amount of tax paid, what was the tax paid during the year, and including the details of exports and imports. That means it includes every data in the GSTR 9. Okay. Apart from the above forms, the government shall serve those taxpayers who fail to furnish the returns on time notice in GSTR 3A. Okay. Apart from the above, 1A, 1A, 1, 2A, 2, 3, and GSTR 9. If anybody has not submitted the returns to the government, then the government will issue notice to the concerned person in the form GSTR 3A. A notice will be issued by the government to the person who fails to furnish the returns. Okay. After the GSTR 3 is fully accepted for the month, then final input to tax credit shall be communicated through form GST ITC 1. Okay. So after finalization of GSTR 3 or after acceptance of the GSTR 3 for the month, the final input credit details will be communicated through GST ITC 1. The details of ITC has to be confirmed in due time to get the credit for that month. So the government will communicate the input tax credit details in GST ITC 1, which is to be confirmed by the customer or the supplier. Okay. If the same is not done in due time, then it will disallow the credit for the month and will be computed as a tax liability for the month instead. So after sending information to the concerned person, if he does not respond or if he does not confirm, then automatically the government will disallow the input tax credit and the customer has to pay tax. Customer has to pay tax to the government. He will be disallowed the input tax credit on his purchases. When this government will disallow the input tax credit, when he is unable to confirm the details provided in GST ITC 1. Okay. Therefore, every person who has submitted GSTR 3 will be intimated by the government the ITC details through GST ITC 1. They should confirm the GST ITC 1. Otherwise, his input tax credit will be disallowed. So these are the various tax forms, various forms of returns, various forms of returns to be submitted by the normal taxpayers. That means the taxpayers who are under normal scheme. Then there is another category of suppliers under the scheme, composition scheme. So what are the various forms of returns to be submitted by the composition taxpayers? What are the various forms of returns to be filed by the composition taxpayers? So let us see the GSTR 4A. GSTR 4A. Here, as far as the composition taxpayers are concerned, the composition taxpayers need not submit returns monthly. The composition dealers, the composition taxpayers, they need not submit monthly returns. They have to submit quarterly returns only. They just submit quarterly returns to the government, then it's more than enough. Monthly returns are not necessarily submitted by the composition taxpayers. Okay, so the first form to be filed by the composition taxpayers is GSTR 4A. GSTR 4A. Similar to the GSTR 2A above, GSTR 4A is generated quarterly for composition scheme taxpayers. That means, in case of normal taxpayers, GSTR 2 will be submitted, and in the same manner for composition taxpayers, GSTR 4A is generated quarterly. It has the details of the inward supplies as reported by the suppliers in GSTR 1. Okay, so It has the details of inward supplies. That means all the purchases made by the composition dealers or composition taxpayers. Okay. Next, GSTR4. With the auto-populated details of GSTR4A, the taxpayer can furnish all his outward supplies here. That means whatever the purchases made by the composition dealer and submitted in GSTR 4A is auto-populated into GSTR 4. In the GSTR 4, along with the purchases, he can furnish all his outward supplies here. So purchases will be auto-filled from the GSTR 4A, and outward supplies the trader has to fill in. He has to furnish out all his outward supplies. The due date is 18th of the following month. The due date is 18th of the following month. That means since it is a quarterly return, first quarter, that means April, May, June, 3 months, first quarter. The last date would be July 18th. For second quarter, it is October 18th. For third quarter, January 18th. For last quarter, next year, December 31st. Okay. So it also contains the details of tax payable and payment of tax. So in the GSTR 4, the tax, what is the total tax payable and what is the tax? The GSTR 4. GSTR 9A. This is the annual return for all composition taxpayers. Okay. So GSTR 4 is a quarterly returns to be submitted by the composition taxpayers. But GSTR 9A is an annual return form. It is annual return form to be submitted by the composition taxpayers. It has to be filed by 31st December of the next financial year. That means the due date for filing annual returns of composition dealers is December 31st of next financial year. That means for 2021, for the financial year 2021, whereas foreign non-resident taxpayers are concerned, they also should file returns because they are also compulsory registration. For them also registration is compulsory as per the GST law. Therefore, they should also submit returns. So the form to be submitted by the non-resident taxpayers is GSTR 5. GSTR 5. This is a detailed form containing the particulars of outward supplies, imports, tax paid, input tax availed, and remaining stock. This has to be filed monthly within 20th of next month, or if the registration is given up, then within 7 days of such surrender or expiry of registration. Okay, this is GSTR 5 is a tax return form to be submitted by the foreign non-resident taxpayers monthly. This is also monthly return form. Monthly return form. It is to be submitted within 20th of the next month. That means 20 days time is given to file monthly GSTR 5 by the foreign non-resident taxpayers. Okay. Suppose if he has closed the registration, or if he has surrendered the registration, or if he has applied for cancellation of registration, then within 7 days of such surrender or expiry of registration, he should submit GSTR 5. Okay. So GSTR 5 is a tax return form to be submitted by the foreign non-resident taxpayers. Okay. Next, returns to be filed by an input service distributor. Returns to be filed by input service distributor. So input service distributor also should file returns. So the form in which they have to submit returns is GSTR 6A. GSTR 6A. This form will be generated by the 11th of next month after the suppliers have filed their GSTR 1 on 10th of the next month. Okay. So after submission of GSTR 1 by all the suppliers, this will be generated. That is GSTR 6A. So therefore, the last date would be something different. It is generated by 11th of next month. Okay. So it will be auto-populated. This is the auto-populated data. So you see, almost all the forms are to be submitted in online. So most of the forms or most of the columns in the forms is auto-populated. That means the supplier need not fill, just he can verify. It will be auto-populated with the details of inward supplies made to them. So whatever the purchases made by the input service distributors, all the details are available in GSTR 6A. It has to be filed on a monthly basis by the ISD. ISD means input service distributor. It is to be submitted monthly by the ISD. Next, GSTR 6. GSTCR 6 is once the details are confirmed or corrected by the ISD. So whatever the information provided in the GSTR 6A, it is to be confirmed by the ISD. Then the GSTR 6 will be generated. So now GSTR 6 will be generated. It has to be filed by the ISD by 13th of the next month. The last date for filing GSTR 6 is 13th of the next month. This is also a monthly filing. This is also a form to be submitted monthly through online, that is GSTN. Next, returns to be filed by a tax deductor. Tax deductor. That means these people also they compulsorily register under the GST Act because they are deducting tax from the customers. Therefore, they have to file returns. So the form in which they have to file returns is GSTR 7. GSTR here. The due date is 10th of the next month. So the tax deductor should also submit monthly returns. And the first form is GSTR 7. In the GSTR 7, what were the details? What were the various tax deductions made by the tax deductor during a particular month? The due date for filing GSTR 7 is 10th of the next month. Next, GSTR 7A. This is a TDS certificate. GSTR 7A is a TDS certificate which is auto-generated upon the filing the GSTR 7 by the tax deductor. Okay, if the tax deductor file GSTR 7, automatically GSTR 7A is auto-populated. It will be available for the assessees to download and keep a record of. It will contain details of the tax deducted and the tax amount of payment made. So it will also contain details of tax, how much tax we have deducted and the total amount of payment made, how much tax paid to the government. All these details will be made available in the GSTR 7A. Next, returns to be filed by an e-commerce portal. Their e-commerce portal or e-commerce operators are also should file their returns. Everybody should file their returns through online only. Okay. Now the e-commerce operator should also submit monthly returns in GSTR 8. GSTR 8. This return shall contain all these files made by the e-commerce seller and the amount of tax collected as well. It has to be filed by 10th of the next month. So for the due date for this also next month 10th. So here, what are the supplies made by the e-commerce operator during a month and how much tax collected? All the details are submitted in the GSTR 8. For those assessees whose annual turnover exceeds 1 crore, then a reconciliation statement in Form GSTR 9B has to be filed by 31st December of the next fiscal year. It has to be filed annually and is basically an audited annual account duly certified by the GSTR 8. A statement in GSTR and So GSTR 9B has to be submitted by the e-commerce operators yearly by the end of December 31st of next financial year. Where the assessees, where the assessee is a government body or a United Nations body, then a monthly form GSTR 11 has to be filed by 28th of the next month. Suppose in case of government body or United Nations body, then monthly form, monthly returns form, GSTR 11, GST 11 has to be filed by 28th of the next month. Next month, 28th is the due date for government body or United Nations body. These bodies have a unique, these bodies have a unique identification number and hence will be required to furnish the details of inward supplies. Where a taxable person's registration has been surrendered, cancelled, then a final return in form GSTR 10 has to be filed within a month of such cancellation or registration. Therefore, wherever the taxable person registration has surrendered because of several reasons, if anybody has surrendered the registration or applied for cancellation of registration, then final return is to be submitted in form GSTR 10, in form GSTR 10 by the uh, tax persons. It will declare the input tax credit and capital goods held by the taxpayer, tax payable and paid at such time. So in GSTR 10, he will declare how much input tax he has availed and what are the capital goods available with him. All details. The government has automated all the forms together by bringing the same details on a real-time basis in front of the taxpayer. Okay, all these various forms 1A, 1, 2A, 2, 3, 4A, 4, 5, 9, 10, 11, all these various forms to be filed by various people, all are made available in the soft copy in the website. The step which is of paramount importance is step 1, that is a form GSTR 1. It will form the basis of all further activities. So among all these things, GSTR 1 is a important document to be filled properly. Any shortcomings or short filing of information in the details provided by the suppliers can be rectified or changed or deleted by the recipient in ample period of time. Okay, so while submitting the returns, if there are any modifications or corrections required, then they can do in online. Once again, they can open their forms and they can make changes in the various return forms and they can submit the real data. It is seamless process that matches all information together to get the final credit figures and tax payable if any. Therefore, the submission of data and correction, validation, confirmation, all these things is a continuous process. It's a continuous process. If everybody will provide correct data, then automatically the credit, input tax credit availability will be uh, done seamlessly and the tax will be collected properly by the government. Now, how to file GST returns online? All these returns, various forms of returns to be submitted online. No physical returns are to be submitted. No question of submitting returns physically. Only online returns will be accepted by the government. No matter whether you are a trader or a manufacturer, you will have to file returns mandatorily. So everybody has to file returns. Everybody means those who have registered under GST Act. It is a matter of perception when it comes to defining the whole return filing process, as some may treat it as a cumbersome or some may feel happy with the level of automation available. So this online return submission process may be felt by some people as a burden, and some people may feel happy that most of the online returns are provided by government can easily confuse a small business owners who does not have any accounting knowledge. So draft GST return format provided by the government can easily confuse. That means the various physical forms of GST returns. All these formats are made available by the government to the small business organizations. Therefore, sometimes they may get confused. Okay. So anyhow, everybody has to file their returns through online or through website called GSTN, GST network. This is a GST uh, website where all forms are made available, and you have to fill in online and submit. Okay, so this is how the various parties, various suppliers of different categories have to file various forms of returns to the state and central government, and after providing the data, correct data and correct information through their online information process, they can avail the input tax credit, and they can avail all the tax benefits which are given by the both central and the state governments. Okay, this is all about the returns under GST. Okay, thank you very much for attending the class. Today the attendance is somewhat very less, and you please inform our friends to attend more and more for the online classes. Okay, so thank you very much, all of you who have attended the class. Post your number and exit. Already posted persons need not post again. Post one time is enough. Okay, so by after posting the number, you can exit from the meeting. Okay, thank you very much.